Hi everyone and welcome to a book review for Colin Fischer. I just finished this last night. I think I've settled on like a 3-star. So this one we're following the perspective of Colin. It's told in third person. And Colin, when the time this was published, which was in 2012, the term Asperger's was more commonly used. Now it's all under autism and autism spectrum disorder. So if it was written today, it would just be autism, not Asperger's. So we're following Colin. It's kind of very stereotypical with things that I would expect from like Hollywood. You know, he doesn't like to be touched. He avoids blue if he can. Hates loud noises. In this one, he barks. And very smart, which there's nothing wrong with those. It's just stuff that we see over and over and over. And not everyone with autism is going to have those things, but there are people who are autistic that will have those things. And sometimes some will have one and not the other, or not to the degree that Colin has them and stuff. He also has trouble reading facial expressions. I have that. I hate loud noises, but I don't bark. You know, it varies with every single person that's on the spectrum. But this is stuff that I would definitely typically see in Hollywood, because it's the same thing that's done over and over on people that are autistic with, it's the same representation over and over. So do keep that in mind. Now, the little research that I've done is that Zack Stentz says he has Asperger's, or at least in an interview that he did quite a while ago. And I believe he has 3 children that are on the autism spectrum. So you do have a bit of own voices there. Just because an author is autistic doesn't mean they're not going to try to convey a certain issue. Does not mean they're not going to stay away from the stereotypes we see all the time, like with Rain Man. I've never seen Rain Man, or other things like that. So, but it is very much how you would expect people to describe someone that's autistic, where they don't know about autism. Anyway, this particular edition was published by Puffin Books in 2012. I did listen to this via audio as well. I had a little bit of an issue with the audiobook. I listened to the audiobook via Audible. The narrator was Jesse Eisenberg. It was 4 hours and 16 minutes at one-time speed. My issue was, okay, so with this book, there are like journal or notebook entries. I did like that. However, there were times where the journal entries felt like, instead of this 14 or 15-year-old kid, it felt like it was someone that was more in their 20s writing. So it was a little jarring at times, especially when it came to certain facts. But with special interests, sometimes you know a lot. It just felt like at times the character was older than they were trying to portray him. And my thing with this is my issue with the audiobook. When the narrator was reading the notebook or the journal entries, it got a weird, almost muffled, tinny sound to it, but then it would be normal when he was reading the rest of the book. It was only with those journal entries that got that really weird sound. So I don't know what was up with that. And this is a young adult contemporary. So my thoughts real quick, 3 stars. One of the things that drew this down for me is there's a lot of author's notes. So you'll be reading and then it's like author's note. And the author's notes are at the end of the page. And it happens enough that, like, okay, so 31, 33, it happens enough that it gets to the point that it's almost jarring. It kind of detracts from the story rather than enhancing it, in my opinion. So there's 34. So there's at least 34 author's notes in this. I don't think those author's notes needed to be there. I think it actually ended up reducing the enjoyment of the book. So that's my biggest gripe with it, of why it only got 3 stars. I still found the book overall enjoyable and interesting. Now, the synopsis leads me to think there's a school shooting. So it talks about how Colin doesn't like all this stuff. He hates to be touched and all of that. And then this gun goes off at school. You automatically think, or at least I did, school shooting. Well, it turns out it's not a school shooting. This person just tries to be this, basically a badass, and gets a gun and takes it to school to show off or intimidate someone. And then there's a fight and the gun falls on the cafeteria floor and goes off. But the gun was concealed at that time. So, and no one is injured. The bullet goes into the ceiling. That's the extent of the thing with the gun. And Colin is trying to figure out who brought the gun. Now, so that's pretty much, I mean, it's a YA and that's the extent of it. You're following Colin as he is investigating, as he's trying to figure out who is responsible for bringing the gun to school. I really don't see a teenager doing that, but whether they're autistic or not, but hey, there's probably one out there that would. Okay, let's get into the facts. Couple words that pop up and situations. Okay, bullying is a big part of this, okay? You have the action of bullying. Like there's one scene where Colin gets his head flushed in the toilet at school, okay? I also classified bullying as far as name calling, okay? So specific bullying happens, now these are just the bare minimum. I could have forgotten to tally a couple of times, but it happens at least 12 times. And again, that's in calling names and actions. One of the names that comes up a lot is short bus. I did not tally how often short bus comes on, and that's done in a very derogatory way. Other words used for bullying are spaz and retard. Okay. Retard came up 3 times, spaz twice. I don't know why I didn't tally how many times short bus came up, but it did. Bastard came up once and bitch once. Okay, fine. Now let's move on to other things. You have the mention that he is high functioning, brought up once. Asperger's is brought up once. Autism a couple of times, but I didn't track how many times autism is brought up because we know the main character is on the spectrum. I tracked the term Asperger's, not in the diary entries and not in the author's notes. So that's something, so it definitely came up more, but you have 2 school fights that happen. One thing that can be very bothering to people is you do have a moment where someone that is autistic has to be restrained. And I know that can be very bothersome to people. In this case, it's a little bit more understanding because there's the fear that he's going to fight and injure someone. So, but I mean, it's just kind of like a bear hug type of a thing, but it's still restraining. So one thing that I found relatable is that Colin has issues with food textures. There are certain things I do not like. I can't stand anything that gives a slimy-like thing. That's why I hate mushrooms, for example. Don't like them. So anything that has that type of a texture, like a mushroom, I can't do. So Colin likes crunchy food. He does not like things that are soft, like cake. God comes up and there is a conversation where he says that he doesn't believe in God and asks someone else if they believe in God. So you do have a little bit of discussion there. Damn comes up 4 times. Hell 8 times. The word gay is mentioned once and not in, it's kind of just thrown out there and kind of meant to be like, oh, are you gay type of a thing. So you have homoerotic, which I have never heard of. figured out what that meant, and you do figure it out with this. It's basically someone that has sexual fantasies of a gay relationship or something like that. Sexual comes up twice, breasts 3 times, ass 6 times. You have, Colin has a younger brother, and in this, there's, I think twice at least, where the little brother's name is Danny. He asks Colin to just stop being how he is. Well, you can't stop being who you are. You know, you can't stop being autistic and having the issues that you have. Now, he's a little brother. He's like, what, 11? So he doesn't fully understand. But at the same time, with growing up with an older brother that's autistic, you would expect to have that little understanding, although he's probably starting to go through this little rebellious thing. So yeah, just telling his older brother basically to stop being different and to stop being autistic. That did bother me a little bit, but it's in there. There is one scene in this where you have some kids, like there's this kid that's telling this story, and it sounds like he's bragging about, or he's made this completely up, about having sex with an adult. So there might be a little bit of adult and minor sexual stuff. It's more innuendo-esque, like how he's the ice cream man. Did that really happen? I don't know, because he's just a very, very minor character and one of the bullies in here. There's a lot of bullies in here. The other thing is that there is reference to the term Asperger's and the person behind it. There's also talk about this other doctor. There's talk about how the guy that Asperger's is named after wanted to help children, that he probably had Asperger's or was autistic, and he was finding kids like him and was trying to prove that they were worth saving. But then there was this other doctor that was like, no, these guys are unclean and need to be killed. So it does delve into that more towards the end. It gives more information about that. I don't know enough to say whether it's true or not. I would hope that they did their research and what they found was factual, but I don't know. So it does talk a lot about how these children were tested and basically deemed unclean and should be killed because they're autistic. So, and that's how things were unfortunately, during Hitler's reign and with the Nazis. People that were unclean for mental issues like autism or Down syndrome or other issues like that, as well as being Jews of a different race, things like that. You were basically deemed unclean and set to die because you're unfit to live. Disgusting, disgusting time. Anyway, so that's the facts. Those are my thoughts. Will I reread this? Probably. I did enjoy it enough that I would not mind rereading this. I just don't know if I would give it more than a 3-star because of how stereotypical it was, because of which there are people who are going to fall into that stereotype. That's just how it is. So I'm kind of mixed. Part of me wants to give it a 4-star because I did enjoy it. But the biggest drawback was how jarring it was with all of the author's notes. So I think I'll settle on a 3-star because of that. I really don't think those author's notes enhanced it. I think they actually detracted from the story. So those are my thoughts. Let me know if you've read this. I did look. This is not only is this their first book, but it's their only book. So there's no other books by these authors. So yeah, those are my thoughts, and those are the stats of this book. Let me know if you've read this. And talk to me in the comments section below. What are your thoughts? Did you like this if you've read it? Talk to me in the comments section below. And until next time, stay true to yourself and enjoy a good book. And I'll talk to you later.